I'm thinking
Um,
if you're listening out there, go feel free to put your mortgage on it. I think that's an easy win.
we're gonna
We
have to
got
throw a disclaimer up. It's not gambling advice.
welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino here with Will Neary and Nick Newmeyer. And today we are going to talk a little bit of recent news. We had Charlie Woods committing to Florida State, so we'll touch on that. We've got our tournament previews, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am going on this weekend, as well as Live Golf Tournament. And we will be talking about next on T and our schedule coming up. But first, I guess we can just touch on the Charlie Wood stuff really quick and see what your guys' thoughts are on that. Is that something? Is it nothing? What are we thinking?
It was something that it popped up on my computer literally as we stopped recording yesterday. So I'm a little irritated about that one. But no, it's interesting. I think Charlie is obviously one of the more well-known youth golfers in the world. And, whether or not that's deserved, that's up for discussion. But no, he's a hell of a talent. Even just like watching him play at the PNC, you could tell he's a really good player. He's going to be a really good player. Um, Florida State's a hell of a program, and I'm excited to see what he could do.
Yeah, don't have a lot to add. I mean, it's something, but it's not a lot. It's like he verbally committed to Florida State. I think he'll be a part of the 2027 recruiting class. So it's a cool thing. Obviously joining Miles Russell, who is like really the headliner of that the Florida State, or will be the headliner of the Florida State team. But it'll the one thing I'll say, it'll be interesting to see how he really stacks up in college golf. I mean, I think it's like Nick kind of said, like we all know who he is and know that he's a good golfer, but I think none of us really know exactly where he lines up particularly well, or at least how he will stack up in the college game. So that'll be cool to see. I didn't have a ton of stuff to add beyond that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting. Obviously, he's one of the game's greatest sons. So we've seen him a little bit before, and I'm sure everyone's anxious to see how he does coming up in the next couple years. Okay, so next thing we wanted to touch on real quick was the Aon Swing 5, Aon Next 10, and some other programs, and kind of explaining what's going on here because there's a lot of intricate, tricky details. So, Will, what do you have on this stuff?
But yeah, I just figured, coming into the first signature event of the year at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am this year, it would be helpful to give a look, because honestly, it was helpful to me to do this research, and hopefully helpful to people listening to kind of understand what the Aon Swing 5 and the Aon Next 10 really do. Obviously, these are alternative ways essentially for people to, or it's a means through which people can get into these signature events and other events. But I'll start with the Aon Next 10, which again, these are things that like as a golf fan, I know exist and theoretically have a general idea of how they work, but never really have dove into before. So this was helpful for me. The Aon X10 basically it covers the FedEx Cup fall, and it gives the top 10 players from the FedEx Cup fall exemptions into the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am and the Genesis Invitational, the first two signature events of the year, obviously this week and next week, which led me down another rabbit hole of the FedEx Cup fall, because that's, again, something I vaguely understand, but don't have a great grasp on. But to simplify it pretty much for anybody who doesn't have a great grasp on it, who maybe like me, basically it's an opportunity for players ranked outside of the top 50 in the FedEx Cup following the Tour Championship to continue to earn points and battle for these exemptions into signature events. Um, so yeah, the players numbered 51st and beyond will play these events, and other players can still compete, but they do not earn any points from the fall series. Their FedEx Cup points are frozen. Um, but winners other than the top 50 will still receive awards that you would at a regular PGA Tour event. So 2-year PGA Tour exemption, 500 FedEx Cup points, the entry into the Players Championship, the Century Tournament of Champions, and the PGA Championship. So still a lot to play for in the FedEx Cup fall. I know we're past the FedEx Cup fall. This is more just me learning about this stuff. One thing I found kind of interesting that I didn't know personally is that the Masters actually changed their qualification structure. So now PGA Tour winners who win on the FedEx Cup fall do not actually get entry into the Masters anymore, because they opened the door for the winners of the Scottish Open, Spanish Open, Japan Open, Hong Kong Open, Australian Open, and South African Open, which basically meant that they had to nix the winners of the FedEx Cup Fall. So now you only get entry into the Masters if you win PGA Tour events that basically like if your FedEx Cup points you get from the wins count towards the Tour Championship. Just a
Interesting.
interesting note, which was yeah a little surprising and kind of a bummer, honestly, because I love that's kind of one of those things that adds a little bit of juice to the FedEx Cup fall events. Obviously, there's still a lot to play for and there's still a lot on the line there, but that was something unique that I found while digging into this. But after all of that explanation, the Aon Next 10, so basically numbers 51 through 60 on the FedEx Cup following the FedEx Cup fall are granted exemptions into the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am and the Genesis, and those are Sammy Valimaki, Max Grazerman, Garrick Higo, Rico Hoey, Nico Echeverria, Aldrich Potgieter, Chris Kirk, Aaron Rye, Minwoo Lee, and Max McGreevy. So they will be there this week, and that is how they got in. And then Aeon Swing 5, luckily, is a lot simpler than the whole long explanation I just gave for the next 10. The Swing 5 is just through these first 4 weeks, the top five players in the 2026 FedEx Cup through the WM Phoenix Open who are not otherwise exempt are provided exemptions into the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am and the Genesis. So obviously guys like Scotty Scheffler, who is, I believe, second currently in the FedEx Cup behind only Chris Gotterup, will not be a part of this because he's already exempt. He doesn't need to worry about getting into these events because of the 20 other wins he has on the PGA Tour. But that stacks up as Pearson Coody, Ryo Hisatsune, Jake Knapp, Matt McCarty, and Patrick Rogers. So those are 15 guys that'll be in the field this week. That's generally how those things work, and a fun little thing to like keep track of, as we get into the season and everything. Just yeah, looking at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro, and those are 15 guys that'll be in the field, and that is how they got there.
Nice, cool. Yeah, that's a good explanation. It's, golf can be a little bit complicated in that way where you don't necessarily know who's playing week to week. So I think it's good to get an explanation for that. Okay, so looking ahead at our AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, we've got a few tournament notes here. So it's the first signature event of 2026. There are no cuts. There's 80 pros, 80 amateurs. The first two rounds, the pairings play one round at Pebble Beach, one round at Spyglass Hill before they play both weekend rounds at Pebble Beach. Right, we know the Pacific Ocean and the windy conditions are going to come into play. Could be wind gusts, could be rainy over the weekend, something to monitor for sure. And then this year has the strongest field so far in any tournament we've had of the first four PGA Tour events. We've got 27 of the top 30 ranked golfers in the world. Only players not playing are Justin Thomas, who's hurt, Patrick Reed, obviously ineligible, and Bryson DeChambeau, obviously in live. So any course notes or any overall themes before we kind of dive into players that you see coming into play here, Nick?
Just the one thing I wanted to point out as well. I think what makes this event fun is the pro-am aspect. I think, we've seen over the years like Bill Murray playing in this event. Like it kind of just I mean it's kind of it just adds a little flair to it. I think just like I was briefly looking at the field of who's playing in this. You have Condoleezza Rice, Ron DeSantis is in the field this year, which I thought was really interesting. Travis Kelsey is back in the field after his antics at the Waste Management Pro-Am. So just it's interesting to see this field. But I think just looking at the actual event itself, because obviously that's what everybody's paying to see. I think it's really interesting. Pebble Beach is one of the best courses on the tour. There's just no disputing that. Um, it's one of the shortest too. It's under 7,000 yards. I think the thing that really stands out to me is the green size. It's just about, 3,500 square feet, one of the smallest like square footage of greens on the PGA Tour. And it's not one of those courses that you can just like overpower with the driver. I feel like that's something we've seen over the years. This is an interesting thing in the notes. Since 2021, players have relied on their driver for just 46% of tee shots, which the average driving distance is a modest 274 yards, which is well below the tour norm. Obviously, Rory last year was the exception, but it's this is a course where accuracy is rewarded a lot more than power. And so I feel like that really brings in like a whole another variable to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I think you covered pretty much everything. Yeah, it'll be cool to see. I think Rory is like the exception that, like you mentioned, I think Kyle mentioned or had texted us that he averaged over 320 yards, right, last year with his driver off the tee, which is not something you expect at a course like Pebble Beach, or at least not something that you necessarily think will vault you up the leaderboard at a course like Pebble Beach. Um, but it is interesting. I kind of love these courses where you have more to think about. I mean, golf, like we know, has become such a bomb and gouge game, which is in and of itself fun in its own way, you know. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it is always fun to see these types of events that reward lots of other parts of the game and tend to give you slightly different leaderboards than you might otherwise see. Obviously, a lot of the same guys still tend to do really, really well at these events because they are just the best. Scotty Scheffler is one of them, but yeah, it's always fun to have these varying events, switching from the WM Phoenix Open to something like this where there's a lot more variation off the tee.
And I think the other thing as well is that I feel like the one thing we're not looking at is, we've said it's a short course. It's not, that almost makes it sound easy. We forget, like, right behind me, right behind you, Will, that's the Pacific Ocean. Like that is a constant variable throughout the entire week. Like the weather is never perfect. It's always windy. There's always some rain that comes in, creeps in every now and then, and that just adds like such another level to it that it's probably I think it's one of the greatest like major championship courses out there. Like whenever there's a major at Pebble, I think it's you always have to pay attention. And I think this is one of the best. I think we're fortunate that we see it almost in major condition every year, basically. And we're kind of spoiled that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why this course is described as the greatest meeting of land and sea in American golf. I mean, it's truly spectacular. There's a reason why Jim Nantz lives in Pebble Beach, right? I mean,
Our
it's
friend
got
Jim
everything
Nance.
you need. Our friend Jim Nantz, you know. So just to reiterate, with the pro-am aspect of the tournament, so the first 36 holes are contested Thursday and Friday at Pebble Beach and Spyglass. Each PGA Tour pro is with an amateur, no cut, and then the final two rounds are played exclusively by the pros at Pebble Beach. So Spyglass will come into play for one of the days, but this will be three of the four rounds by the pros are going to be played at Pebble Beach. So that's really where the focus is. So
Yeah, and
with yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, 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 you're good. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say
I'll get to it in a second.
with that in mind, who are some of the guys that we're looking at this week and some other aspects of the course that are interesting.
Yeah, I think, like you said, so much of this is weather dependent, and part of that plays into who I think, are people worth watching. It does look like we're supposed to get some weather this weekend, particularly Saturday and Sunday. It's hard to necessarily say, 5 days ahead, but that's what it looks like. It looks like wind and maybe even some rain. We might get some real conditions on Sunday, which is always very fun when the tournament comes down to that. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of the players that are able to play in those environments and those different variables typically tend to lend themselves towards players that a lot more European players, frankly. Like guys like Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, Justin Rose, Tommy Fleetwood, Matt Fitzpatrick. Or I know Nick, I'll save some of the Matt Fitzpatrick content for you later. But those are guys that are able to play in those conditions and grew up on them. And obviously, guys like Scotty Scheffler um, are other guys that are going to be able to compete no matter what the conditions are. But those were a few of the names that floated through my head before even looking at, course history and everything, just thinking about the weather. I think Steph Straka's done a lot of really good work in adverse weather as well. So those are some of the guys that are able to perform no matter the conditions and are worth noting going into a week like Pebble Beach, like where you said, Nick, that anything can happen at any given time. The weather can switch in seconds. So always worth noting.
Looking at some people, obviously, you mentioned course history. I feel like I'm just gonna get out of the way now. Jordan Spieth is someone that plays very well at this course. He's someone that Um, he's someone that, regardless of what form he's in heading into the year, you could always count on him to put together 4 rounds at Pebble. And so, I mean, I guess looking at the past few years, T69, T39, T63 in his last 3 years, nothing to really write home about. But solo second, T3, T9 in the 3 years before that. Obviously, he won it in 2017. Like, I was really candid about Jordan Spieth yesterday. I think, I was very real about where his game is at. And I think I don't really have a lot of expectations heading into Pebble. I would say let's just see if he makes the cut, but that's already taken care of. So that's a win in his eyes. Um, but yeah, I think he's someone that you always have to at least pay attention to. I think 2022 almost fell to his death on a cliff hitting that shot. He's someone that's always fun to watch around Pebble. So just had to get that one out of the way.
Yeah, I think Jordan, I mean, he's always somebody to watch around here. And I think in terms of when you talk about previous winners, some of the other guys, Rory McIlroy won it last year. Obviously, he's the defending champion, like we mentioned, kind of overpowered this place in a way that most people don't. Wyndham Clark, Justin Rose, Tom Hoagie, Daniel Berger, Nick Taylor are the other most recent winners. Phil Mickelson has won here 4 times. Just a little fun note. Obviously, he's not defending any of those titles this week, but always worth mentioning. But yeah, I mean, some guys beyond just the winners that I saw that have really good course history. Obviously, Justin Rose does have that win in 2023. He's also got a T3 and a T11 in 2025 and 2024, and a T6 in 2016. So he's a guy who's played here a lot. Or well a lot, and that's in 6 total starts. That's a T11, a win, a T3, and a T6. Pretty good stuff. Jason Day is always fun. He's had a weird start to the year. Obviously, he played well in one tournament, but played poorly in another tournament. And in 15 total starts, he's got 9 top 10s and 12 top 20s. So he knows how to play this course pretty well. Obviously, a ton of experience that's dating back, till like the early 2010s when he was out around here. But his last 10 starts, I'm not going to read out all the starts for everybody, I promise, but worth noting T13, T6, T24, T7, fourth, T4, T2, T5, T11, T4. Pretty good. I like to think that that's an all right run of form for our guy Jason Day. And I'll stop after this one, I promise. But Daniel Berger is somebody I'm curious about. Obviously, he's one of my guys. I've been watching him already all year, but 3 starts here. Obviously, has not started here since 2021. A lot of that due to injuries, etc. But in those 3 starts, he's been top 10 every single time and won this event in 2021. So good track record. Another guy that feels like a high floor option, kind of wherever he goes, especially the way he's been playing this year. I don't see him shooting himself out of this tournament, especially in adverse weather that might take some other guys out. So will definitely be worth watching him as we get into the week.
I think someone I have
Yeah.
my eye on too is Siwoo Kim. Like, I think this has been the year of Siwoo Kim so far. I know, like, we've been
Really
talking about
has.
Chris Gotterup, we've been talking about Scotty Scheffler. Siwoo's been in every single tournament pretty much, and he's played very well. And I think it's only a matter of time before he actually converts that into a win. And so he's someone that I'm going to have my eye on. Also, Ludwig Åberg back in the field, as I said yesterday. We don't know what version of him we're getting. So that's just he's just someone to keep an eye on. I think that's just going to depend on how he plays, like what he's feeling heading into the week. But that's just the biggest question mark, I think, is how Ludwig's going to play.
Yeah, I'm with you on Siwoo. I think he's for sure someone to watch. I mean, first time in his career, he's been inside the top 10 for 3 consecutive events. He's now got a streak of 11 consecutive T21 or better. So he's just playing really well. I think I'm going to have my eye on Sahith Theegala as well. He's been T18 or better in his last 3 starts. He looks healthy and he looks composed and he looks pretty good. So I don't know if he's going to win, but I like him to finish in the top 20. And then my follow through guy, Tommy Fleetwood, I'm going to have my eye on too. I know I mentioned yesterday he hasn't necessarily played well in any of the DP World Tour events he's played. And he played at Pebble last year. He was T22 the year before, T31. He always plays decently well here. So, you never know. He could get hot and string together a couple good rounds. And, we know he's a really good golfer.
Yeah,
And then one.
go,
And then one more guy to kind of just play off of. Matt Fitzpatrick. I know Will kind of teed me up for that. He fits the English mold that you mentioned of just players that are kind of used to that weather, and nearly pulled it all together in Phoenix. I think gained strokes in pretty much every category except putting. That's the only one that I'm a little iffy on, is he's lost strokes putting in both of his last two rounds. But this is a course that rewards accuracy over power, and Fitz is someone that really fits that model. Obviously, like around the green, he's very good putting. I know he's obviously lost strokes, but he's typically a pretty good putter. So if he's someone that if he can get the putter going for a few rounds, he's someone that I definitely expect to be up in the field.
Yeah, I don't have another guy to add. I agree with everything you guys said. The one I'm curious about and curious to watch is Sahith Theegala. I think Kyle, I know you mentioned a lot about him. I'm always amazed by how guys like Sahith, who are they put so much spin on the ball, left to right. Like he's a huge shot shape guy. And it's always amazing to me how those guys manage to play in really windy conditions. Because I know for myself, I mean, I'm a lot less intentional about the spin I put on the ball. Most of the time, it is very much an accident. But God, I mean, windy conditions are just, my nightmare. So it's always incredible to me watching these guys, who put so much spin on it, just hold it up against the wind, keep it under the wind, hit a draw with the wind to get even more motion out of it. It's pretty wild to watch guys like that play, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I kind of hope the wind picks up this weekend and we get to see him kind of really manufacture some shots out there.
And with this tournament being one where scrambling's such a big factor, and you've got guys missing greens left and right, and there's tough greenside bunkers, and the greens are so tough to read once you even get there. Do you guys think this is tougher of a course to predict who's going to do well on relative to other ones, or is it just this is just how it goes throughout the year on the PGA Tour?
Well,
I would
yeah, I
say
think we got to
no,
get
you're
better at
good.
this.
You're good.
Um,
I'm Go ahead, Nick. Take it away.
yeah, I think as I mentioned, the weather, like it's a completely different course when the weather is calm. And I think, what was it? Was it like 2 years ago when it was like crazy winds and rain? They had to like suspend play for a few hours, and like it's a completely different course when the weather is acting up. And so obviously, Will mentioned that there might be some weather on the way. It's tough to predict that far in advance, but you really don't know what it's going to be like until you step up at that tee.
Yeah, I think what I was going to add is that, like you said, it's super variable, which brings a lot of people into play. But the weird thing about, I was looking through as I tend to the odds boards or whatever, what you see on your various betting sites, and it's tough for me to see somebody coming from like out of nowhere. But I do see like the middle of the pack, like those guys that are maybe 20th to 30th on the odds boards. Like I can kind of see them moving up, but it's hard for me to imagine, some of the guys that we talked about earlier like for example, that are were in the Aon Next 10, just to pull like Nico Echeverria. I love you, my guy. I don't think you're winning this tournament. There's a couple guys that
Oh,
like
I can't wait to clip that
I
after we
know
win.
that's gonna be I'm just getting content for the team here. Should I go through the whole list so that if one of them
Yes.
hits, we get good
Yeah,
content out of
just
it? No, like it's a really interesting tournament that brings a lot of people in, but it's hard for me to imagine like they're gonna end up with a name where I'm like, wow, that's that guy, you know, or like a
uh,
first time winner or like one of those guys from out of nowhere. I don't see that happening.
is there anybody in the top 10, 20 guys on the odds board that kind of surprises you that their odds are as good as they are? I mean, it's kind of tough. Scotty's a plus 290, and then the next closest is Rory at plus 1300. So it's always tough to bet on who's going to win a golf event, but anybody that sticks out.
Xander for me, I just how high he is, the fact that he's third, the fact, I mean, it goes Scotty 290, Rory at 1300, obviously a big drop off after that. We've got Xander Schauffele and Siwoo Kim at plus 2500. I'm pretty surprised that Xander's third. I feel like we're really leaning into bias from what he's done in his past. Obviously, he's won an Open Championship, which is something to think about in adverse conditions, and obviously won a PGA as well. But man, like the form he's shown has not indicated to me that he is more likely to win this tournament than Siwoo Kim or Justin Rose is seventh. Like I would pick Justin Rose before I picked Xander. And again, hopefully, prove me wrong, Xander. Hopefully you're top of this list come Sunday and you take this thing home. But man, there are a lot of guys on just looking at the betting odds per DraftKings right now, like there's a lot of guys behind Xander that I would pick before I even thought about Xander, to be honest, at this point.
Nick, how about you?
I mean, I think the one that stands out to me, shout out, actually, is he even, did I lose? Oh yeah, right below Siwoo and Xander, Victor Hovland, shout out Maddie. I think Hovland is someone that his his game has been trending well. I thought he maybe was going to take it in Phoenix as well. I think the key stat that I mentioned was, the approach shots within 100 to 150 yards that play well here, and he's in the 97th percentile according to Data Golf in those in within that yardage. And so I think he's definitely someone to keep an eye on as well. I know he's up in the Scandinavian part of Europe, not necessarily in the English. So I don't know how he fits into that little mold that Will brought up, but we can definitely keep an eye on Victor this week too.
Yeah. I think the last one I'll pipe up with, just looking at the list that we've got screenshotted in here, is Robert McIntyre. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a guy that I could definitely see being a part of this thing. He hasn't really played. He's played here once, and I believe, yeah, T40 in 2025, and obviously didn't play great at the Amex, but T4 at the Sony, in his most recent DP World Tour tournaments, T8, T9, and a win. Um, Definitely a guy that I could see being. He's kind of, when I talk about the guys in the middle of the pack or the upper middle of the pack for Robert McIntyre that I could see lifting this trophy, he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, totally. So we will have our official picks we'll put out on our socials coming up, I imagine, either tonight or tomorrow morning before the tournament actually kicks off. So we will be anxiously awaiting that and can't wait to watch that tournament. It's always such a fun one and just a great one to have on TV. Every tournament and every golf club is gorgeous, but this one personally I love with you got the shots of the Pacific Ocean. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Never.
Have you guys watched Perfection at Pebble? I'm sure you have the Tiger Woods doc from his win here. If you
Oh
haven't,
yeah.
you have to. It's one of the most beautiful YouTube videos of all time and shows what a psychopath Tiger Woods was. I think in the last he had won this thing by a billion already, and in the last round he had just given himself his own challenge to not make a bogey just for giggles, and of course did it because he's just that guy. But
Of course.
uh, a great watch. Would recommend to both of you and anybody listening out there to go check it out.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm gonna have to go check that one out. Okay, any last Pebble Beach notes, tips for anybody out there?
As usual, anything we say is probably not going to happen. So,
Yeah, exactly. Fade
We
everything we
did
just said.
we did not mention Scotty Scheffler, I think, for the last like 15 minutes. I just want to throw out there that he's probably going to win this tournament just to
Yeah.
cover my ass a little bit. Like he's probably going to win. Let's just be clear.
Always a safe bet to assume Scotty's gonna be up. I mean, just looking at the odds, it's just comical
I
how,
know.
it's
And
it's just not,
he's never even won here. T9, two starts, T9, T6, very
yeah.
good performance, but like, for him it just shows how incredible he is that he's so far atop this leaderboard,
Do
without
we need to
even
start taking like what was it, the DraftKings model of like winner without Scotty or
yeah.
we might we might have to reinvent our entire picks, the way our picks work, because otherwise
Yeah.
the smart one of us would just pick Scotty every single time.
I mean, it's working well for me on fantasy.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, it
that's
is.
exactly why Nick's running away with fantasy
I
for
know.
us.
Work smarter,
Okay.
not harder.
All right. Well, so let's move on here. Let's get a little FedEx Cup standings talk here. So we've had a few events under our belt, so there's a good amount of data we can pull from. So right now, as it sits, we've got Chris Gotterup is in first place, Scotty is in second, Ryan Gerard third, Justin Rose fourth, and Siwoo Kim fifth. We'll touch on the rest of the top 16 here, but those are the top five. Just overall, after the first few events of the season so far, what kind of stuff stands out to you guys?
I mean, obviously Chris Gotterup. I mean, he's someone that, we saw him at, Scottish Open and the Open Championship, and then we thought he was going to be good, and then I don't think anybody expected him to be this good. Like 2 wins in his last 3 starts. Like he's someone that, I'm hoping it doesn't fade because he's been really, really fun to watch so far.
Yeah, I mean, like I couldn't agree more. It's been awesome, and he's such a fun player. Like just you know bombs it, but seems to have the touch he needs to. I mean, that shot, that birdie he made on 18 on Sunday at the WM, the first one where he's in the right rough and just hits a wedge to a foot to tap it in under a crazy amount of pressure. The one that stood out to me is, man, Ryan Gerard is third in the FedEx Cup. Like,
Yeah.
when did that happen? I feel like I'm maybe the worst golf journalist of all time for not knowing that he was second at the Sony by himself and second at the Amex, T2 at the Amex, T11 at the Farmers in 3 starts so far. Um, Kind of insane, but good for him. I mean, the other ones are pretty predictable. We've talked about Siwoo Kim a lot. Justin Rose obviously had that runaway win at the Farmers. And Scotty is Scotty with a win in a T3. But yeah, Goddard is definitely the like all-star here. This so far this year has been the one that stood out the most to me.
Can I just throw out? I'm really interested to see how Hideki does this week. He's played like kind of well. Like he's played well, right? I mean, even at WM Phoenix Open, it's like a pitcher who doesn't have his best stuff, but he's still competing, right? And that kind of felt like how Hideki was doing it at TPC Scottsdale. I mean, he's T13 at the Sony, he's T11 at Farmers, and then obviously what happened this past week at the WM Phoenix Open. So it's not like he's been playing super poorly. I'm kind of expecting him to bounce back and play well this week.
Yeah, I think the driver thing on Sunday was so weird, and but it is, like, to his credit, astonishing that hitting 2 fairways, he didn't make a bogey until 18. Obviously, it was an incredibly, incredibly costly bogey, and that's worth noting. But it, like, to not make a bogey when you just do not have your driver at all is just a testament to how good a golfer he is. I think the one thing I will say about him is the lack of Pebble Beach uh, prowess, I guess is a fun way to say it. In 2025, he was T48, T71 in 2024. And that's, obviously outside of the major championships here, but just at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, he has not played particularly well. But I would agree. I mean, it seems like something that would fit him fairly well. Obviously, a great iron player.
Do you think it'll play more into his game if, like as we said, Pebble is not a real driver heavy course, if it kind of just takes the driver out of his bag and he can kind of focus on like some of the other strengths of his game?
I would think so, right? After last week, I guess the question is, is it T-balls or is it driver? Is it Woods? Is it driver? But I think generally I would think so, though. The only worry I have is that I'm sure he spent a hell of a lot of time this week working that driver and trying to fix it. So it's more like hopefully he comes in with that thing working. But yeah, I mean, I would assume that that would play into his favor a little bit. What I don't know, and I'm curious to hear from you guys, is if you think like adverse weather plays into Hideki's favor. Obviously, if the driver's gone, it's a lot tougher when you don't know where the ball's going off the tee. But just generally with the iron play he's got, I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I think irons, he's one of the premier long iron hitters on tour. And if there's a situation that calls for long irons, he's someone that I'm going to take. He's the one that I would trust in that field. But like you said, it's just the lack of Pebble Beach experience. Obviously, weather's weather. Like, if it's rain like that, it's you don't need to play at one course specifically in order to know how to do it. But I think there's a lot of players in the field that are maybe going to have a better idea of how to deal with Pebble Beach weather, and that's my one concern about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just super interested. I think a lot of people are to see how he bounces back. He's been such a good player for such a long time. I think people are rooting for him. So it'll be interesting to see. One other guy who's ninth in the FedEx Cup standings right now, who's played really
I
well
knew
this
you were gonna
year.
go. I knew
I
you were gonna
mean,
go here.
I'm gonna see if I can get away with mentioning him at least once on every pod. Is Jake Knapp, who I know we've harped on a little bit, but he's been playing really well, and he's definitely playing for something, and he's really trying to prove something out there. So he'll be a guy to keep an eye on. I was looking last night on some of the FanDuel apps they have, and they have so many different bets you can do. They've got all sorts of, you can pair guys to finish top 10, top 20, top five. They've got a bunch of, long shot features you can do. And one of the ones that really caught my eye was Jake Knapp and Siwoo Kim, both to finish top 10, I think was like plus 820. And I
Mhm.
think for them both to finish top 20 is like plus 200, which is pretty good odds right there. What do you guys think about that?
Gam
Yeah, in a field of 80, I like it. Where it's a no cut event. I love it.
Gamble responsibly.
Yes. Yeah, we are not advising that you go gamble. But if you were, that would not be the worst place to do it on what Kyle just suggested.
I'm thinking
Um,
if you're listening out there, go feel free to put your mortgage on it. I think that's an easy win.
we're gonna have to
Exactly.
throw a disclaimer up. This not gambling advice. Um, no, I
I think
can't
that's
wait to,
that's
I
the
mean,
intro right there.
yeah, there we go. Man, Jake Knapp he's so fun to watch. Like we talked about this the other day. The smoothest swing in the world. It'll be so fun to watch him at Pebble. I think he's played here once and it wasn't particularly remarkable, but he's probably in the best form of his career right about now, or at least matching it. Um, Other guys I was interested about just looking down the FedEx Cup list, which, we listed off the top five: Hideki, Jake Knapp. I've talked enough about Pearson Cootie. I'm not gonna do a whole thing. I think he's awesome and would love to see him keep up this run of top 20s that he's currently on. It's great. This is why I was curious to learn about the Aeon Swing 5, or the Aeon Swing 5. That's how Pearson Cootie got into this event. Um, and I'm excited to see him step up. And I will say the reason I wrote 16 names and not 15 is because I did want to shout out my Massachusetts local, Michael Thorbjornsen, Wellesley native, obviously cut at the Amex T18 at the Farmers, and then it should have been a win, but a T3 at the WM Phoenix Open. And another guy, just, premier big hitter, like seems to have those irons dialed in. We saw it almost the entire week at the WM until pretty much 16 and 17. And that was really just a little bit of adrenaline on 16. So would be really cool to see him out there for sure. And Jason Day, I'm interested. I'm intrigued to see what you're going to do this week, Jason Day, after a T2 at the Amex. We mentioned the experience he has here at Pebble. Another guy just like, man, I will never not be rooting for Jason Day to be a part of these things. Like to see him up top at the leaderboard on Sunday would be awesome. I am a little worried because he feels a lot more variable than some of the other guys we've mentioned. Like he's one of those guys that I could see him near the top, but I could see him near the bottom if things go the wrong way.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely somebody I will be keeping a wary eye on as we get into this Thursday, Friday start to this tournament.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good talk there. I think we pretty much hit on everyone we needed to, all the major players coming into this weekend. So it'll be really fun to watch, and excited for that. So next week we will be back to our regularly scheduled program. So we're going to have a pod on Monday recapping AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and then we'll come back on Wednesday as we are in full swing getting ready for the Genesis Invitational at the Riviera Country Club. So that's going to be exciting. We're going to put on our official picks on social media. We'll put that up on our Instagram at centercup.pod. Look for us on Twitter. We've got great content coming out on there at centercuppod. Email us centercup.pod@yahoo.com. Let us know what you think. And we will be posting to Instagram and TikTok throughout the weekend, kind of keeping pace with the tournaments. Any final words, guys?
No, let's have a good first signature event of the year.
Fantastic. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will catch you on Monday.